3 weeks into the diplomatic tour, the royal starship entered a region of space that made everyone nervous. This was the Kale Nebula, a vast cloud of purple and crimson gas that stretched across 40 light-years and blocked most sensor readings. Ships that entered the nebula often had trouble navigating, communicating, or detecting threats until those threats were already upon them. Varelia stood on the bridge and watched the swirling colors fill the viewscreen. It was beautiful in a dangerous way, like a predator with bright scales that warned. "You to stay away. How long until we clear the nebula?" she asked Captain Morvith, a gray-scaled Volanthe who had served the royal family for 60 years. Checked his instruments and frowned. 12 hours at current speed, Your Highness. The nebula is too dense for faster travel. We must proceed carefully. And why are we traveling? Through it at all instead of around it. Going around would add 3 weeks to our journey. Your Highness, your father specifically requested that we maintain the original schedule. Of course he did, Varelia thought. Her father cared more about schedules than safety. She turned away from the view screen and noticed a human standing near the back of the bridge. He was watching the nebula with an expression she could not read, his dark eyes reflecting the purple and red light. He had a datapad in his hands and was typing something, though she could not see what is he doing here? She asked Azasok quietly. He requested permission to observe bridge operations. Your Highness. Captain Morvith approved it as part of his cultural exchange duties. I said to keep him out of my sight. I apologize, Your Highness. Shall I have him removed? Varelia considered it, but something about the way the human was studying the nebula made her curious. He did not look bored or confused like a typical trainee. He looked focused, intense, almost worried. Leave him for now, she said. But I want to know what he is writing on that datapad. 2 hours later, the ship's engines failed. It happened without warning. One moment they were cruising through the nebula at a steady pace. And the next moment the lights flickered, the engines groaned, and everything went dark. Emergency power came on a few seconds later, bathing the bridge in red light, but the main systems remained offline. Report. Captain Morvith bellowed, engines are down. Captain, primary and secondary systems are both offline. It looks like someone sabotaged the fuel injection matrix. Sabotage? On a royal vessel? Yes, Captain. The damage is deliberate. Someone knew exactly where to cut. Varelia felt cold fear wash through her body. Sabotage meant a traitor on board. Sabotage in the Kale Nebula meant something far worse. Where are we? She asked. Captain Morvith checked the navigation console, and his scales turned pale. We are drifting toward an uncharted moon at the edge of Vrathos territory. Your Highness, at our current speed, we will enter their space within 6 hours. The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The Vrathos were the most feared predators in the known galaxy. They were 8 feet tall with 4 arms and armored skin that could stop blade and bullet. They had infrared vision that let them hunt in total darkness and regenerative biology that let them heal from wounds that would kill any other species. Their entire culture was built on hunting, killing, and establishing dominance. They had never been conquered, never been defeated, never shown mercy to anyone who entered their territory without permission, and now the princes of the Ascendant Dominion was drifting straight toward them. In a crippled ship, can we repair the engines? Varelia asked. The Dormac engineer says he needs at least 20 hours. Your Highness, we do not have that much time. Can we call for help? The nebula blocks long-range communications. No signal will reach anyone outside. Then what can we do? Captain Morvith did not answer. He did not need to. They all knew the truth. They could do nothing. They could only wait and hope. The ship drifted for 5 more hours before it entered the gravitational pull of the uncharted moon. Emergency thrusters slowed their descent, but they still hit the surface hard enough to shake the entire vessel. When the shaking stopped, Varelia found herself lying on the floor of the bridge with blood running from a cut on her forehead. Strong hands helped her up. She expected to see one of her Volanti guardsmen, but instead she found herself looking into the calm brown eyes of the human trainee. "Are you injured, Your Highness?" he asked. "I am fine," she said, pulling away from him. "Where is my protection detail?" "Assembling outside. We need to establish a defensive perimeter before nightfall." She stared at him. There was something different about his voice now. Something harder and more commanding. He did not sound like a trainee anymore. "Who gave you authority to give orders?" she demanded. "No one, Your Highness. But someone needed to act, and your captain is unconscious. You can relieve me of command as soon as we are safe. But right now we need to move." He turned and walked toward the exit without waiting for her response. Varelia wanted to be angry, wanted to shout at him for his disrespect, but she found herself following him instead. Something about his confidence made her trust him, even though she did not understand why. Outside the ship, the moon's surface was rocky and covered with strange purple vegetation that glowed faintly in the darkness. The sky above was filled with the swirling colors of the nebula, and two small moons hung low on the horizon. It would have been beautiful if not for the danger. The protection detail had formed a circle around the ship's main exit. The Volanti stood with weapons ready, their golden eyes scanning the darkness. The Mortith had activated their targeting systems and were tracking movement in the distance. Everyone was tense, afraid, waiting for something terrible to happen. Cole walked among them, checking positions, adjusting angles, speaking quietly to each soldier in turn. They listened to him without question, which surprised Varelia more than anything else. These were elite warriors who had served for decades, and they were taking orders from a human. Trainee, she approached him as he finished his rounds. "You seem very calm for someone who is about to die," she said. He turned to face her, and in the dim light of the nebula, she could see something in his eyes that she had not noticed before. It was not fear, not panic, not even courage. It was something colder and more patient, like a hunter waiting for prey. "Fear is useful, Your Highness," he said. "It keeps you alert. Panic is the enemy. Panic makes you stupid. And you never panic?" "Not anymore." She wanted to ask what that meant, wanted to understand how this unremarkable human had become so calm in the face of certain death. But before she could speak, the Ulathi Scion cried out in alarm. "Contact! Multiple hostiles approaching from the north. They are coming fast." Cole looked toward the darkness, and for just a moment, Varelia thought she saw him smile. "Here they come," he said softly. The Vrathos had found them. Princess Varelia stood at the viewing deck of the royal starship and watched the stars pass by like rivers of light. She was bored, tired, and deeply annoyed at the entire situation she found herself in. Her father, the Emperor of the Ascendant Dominion, had ordered this diplomatic tour of the frontier colonies 6 months ago. It was meant to show the outer worlds that the royal family cared about them, that they were not forgotten, that they mattered to the grand empire that ruled over 200 star systems. Varelia did not want it to go. She had said this many times, but her father would not listen. He never listened. "Your Highness," a voice called from behind her. "The protection detail has assembled in the main hall for your inspection." She turned to face her chief advisor, a tall and thin creature named Desok, who belonged to a species known for their political cunning and their complete lack of combat ability. He was useful for paperwork and scheming, nothing more. "Must I inspect them personally?" she asked with a sigh. "Protocol demands it, Your Highness." "You know this." She knew it. She hated it. She went anyway. The main hall of the starship was large enough to hold 300 soldiers standing in formation, but today there were only 24. This was her elite protection detail, handpicked from the finest warriors in the Dominion Virilia, walked down the line and examined each one with careful eyes. She had been trained to assess military personnel since childhood, and she knew quality when she saw it. The first 12 were Volanthi guardsmen, massive reptilian warriors who stood over 7 feet tall and wore ceremonial armor that could stop plasma rounds. Their scales were deep green, and their eyes were golden. They were loyal, deadly, and utterly devoted to the royal family. Virilia approved of them. The next 8 were Mortis sentinels, cybernetic soldiers whose bodies were more machine than flesh. They had replaced their weak organic parts with weapons and armor and targeting systems. They did not eat or sleep or feel fear. They simply killed whatever threatened their assigned target. Virilia approved of them as well. Then she reached the final 4 members of her detail, and her mood soured. 3 of them were acceptable enough. A Krethian tracker with 4 arms and enhanced senses, a Ulathi scion who could detect hostile intentions, and a Dormac engineer who could repair any technology in the known galaxy. But the 4th one made her stop and stare. He was human. Virilia had seen humans before, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had heard of them by now. They were the newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel, having done so barely a century ago. They had spread quickly across a small region of space and established something called the Terran Coalition, which was eager to make friends and allies among the older civilizations. But Virilia had never seen a human up close until this moment. He was shorter than the Volanthi, shorter than the Mortis, shorter than almost everyone else in the line. He had brown skin and dark hair cut very short and brown eyes that watched her with calm attention. He wore a simple gray uniform with minimal armor and carried no visible weapons. A small patch on his shoulder identified him as a member of something called the Stellar Defense Corps, and smaller text beneath it read, Cadet, Cultural Exchange Program, a cadet. They had sent her a trainee. What is this? Virilia asked, turning to Dezok with anger in her voice. This is Cadet Marcus Cole, Your Highness. He has been assigned to your detail as part of a diplomatic agreement with Earth. A diplomatic agreement, she repeated. The words tasted bitter on her tongue. Yes, Your Highness. The Terran Coalition has been eager to participate in joint military operations, and your father believed that including one of their personnel in your protection detail would strengthen relations between our peoples. Virilia looked at the human again. He stood perfectly still, his face showing no emotion, his posture correct but somehow unremarkable. Everything about him seemed ordinary, average, forgettable. He is a trainee, she said. Not even a full soldier. What is he supposed to do if we are attacked? Take notes. One of the Volanthi guardsmen made a sound that might have been a laugh, but covered it quickly with a cough. The human Cole did not react at all. He simply continued to stand there, watching, waiting, as if he had not heard her words or did not care about them. Your Highness, Dezok said quietly, it would be unwise to offend Earth's ambassadors by rejecting their contribution. This human is a symbol, nothing more. He will stand at the back of formations and observe, and when the tour is complete, he will return to Earth with stories of your greatness. Everyone benefits. Virilia considered this for a long moment. She did not like it, but she understood the political reality. Sometimes you had to accept worthless gifts and pretend to be grateful. Very well, she said. He may stay, but keep him out of my sight as much as possible. She finished her inspection and left the hall without another word. Behind her, the protection detail relaxed slightly. The Volanthi whispered to each other in their rumbling language. The Mortis remained silent and still as always. The other specialists drifted into small conversations. Only Marcus Cole remained exactly as he had been, standing straight, watching the door through which the princess had departed. The Krethian Tracker moved closer to him and spoke in a voice that carried clearly across the hall. Do not feel bad, human. She treats everyone with contempt. You are not special. I know, Cole replied. His voice was calm and soft, without anger or hurt. Still, it must sting. Coming all this way just to be called worthless. Your species has pride, yes? Cole turned his head slightly to look at the Krethian. Something flickered in his brown eyes, something that came and went too quickly to identify pride can be a weakness, he said. I prefer patience. The Krethian laughed and walked away, shaking his head at the strange little human with his strange little words. That night, as the ship traveled through the darkness between stars, Marcus Cole sat alone in his small quarters and studied a holographic display that showed detailed information about the route ahead. Star charts, territorial boundaries, threat assessments, species profiles. He paused on one entry and read it carefully, his eyes moving back and forth across the text. Memorizing every detail, the entry was about the Vrathos Collective and their hunting grounds in the Kale Nebula. Cole read it 3 times, then closed the display and sat in silence for a long while, thinking, planning, preparing. The princess thought he was unremarkable. She was supposed to think that everyone was supposed to think that, and when the time came, if the time came, Marcus Cole would show them all exactly how wrong they had been, but not yet. For now, he would watch. He would wait. He would learn. That was what humans did best. After all, they watched. They waited. They learned, and then, when the moment was right, they acted. The princess and her guardsmen would understand this eventually. Everyone did, sooner or later. They came out of the darkness like shadows given form. 3 Vrathos scouts, each one standing 8 feet tall, with 4 muscular arms and skin that looked like gray stone. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, seeing heat instead of light. Tracking every living thing in the camp with predatory precision. Virilia had seen images of the Vrathos before, had read reports about their hunting methods and their brutal culture, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of standing before them. They radiated danger the way a star radiates heat. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to run, to hide, to do anything except stand there and wait for death. The Volante guardsmen formed a wall in front of her, their weapons raised and ready. They were brave warriors, fearless in battle, but even they were trembling slightly as the Vrathos approached. Some enemies were too terrible to face without fear. The Mortith sentinels powered up their weapons, and targeting lasers painted red dots on the chests of the approaching hunters. If a fight started, they would fire without hesitation. But everyone knew that 3 Mortith could not stop 3 Vrathos. The math did not work. The Vrathos were simply too fast, too strong, too hard to kill. The lead scout stopped about 50 meters from the camp and made a sound that was half growl and half laugh. The other 2 spread out to flank the group, cutting off escape routes, hurting their prey like animals, soft things. The lead scout said in broken galactic common, "Lost little soft things. You come to our home uninvited. You know what happens now. We did not choose to come here," Virilia called out. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to speak. She was a princess. She would not die in silence. Our ship was sabotaged. We only want to repair it and leave. The scout laughed again, a horrible sound that echoed across the rocky ground. Want does not matter. You are here. You are prey. The hunt begins now. He took a step forward, and all 12 Volante raised their weapons higher. Energy hummed in the air as plasma rifles charged to full power. One wrong move would start a massacre. Then a voice spoke from behind the defensive line, and everything changed. Voktharan Val Crimeth. Noel Vastok Nol Vrymeth. The words were harsh and guttural, full of sharp sounds and rolling growls. They were nothing like galactic common. They were something older, something sacred. The Vrathos scouts froze. Their red eyes went wide. Their postures shifted from confident to uncertain. In a single heartbeat, Marcus Cole walked through the line of Volante guardsmen and stepped into the open ground between the camp and the hunters. He was unarmed, his hands empty and visible, his posture straight but not aggressive. He looked small and fragile compared to the massive predators facing him, like a child standing before giants. What is he doing? Aurelia whispered. No one answered. No one knew. Cole spoke again in that strange language, his voice calm and steady, each word precise and deliberate. Aurelia did not understand what he was saying, but she could see the effect it had on the Vrathos. They were listening, actually listening, to this tiny human who should have been nothing more than easy prey. The lead scout snarled something back, and Cole replied without hesitation. The exchange continued for almost a minute, getting faster and more intense, until finally the scout let out a roar of challenge and charged straight at Cole with all four arms reaching to grab and tear. Aurelia screamed. The Volante tried to fire, but Cole was already moving. He did not run away. He ran forward, straight toward the charging monster. At the last possible second, he dropped low and slid beneath the scout's grasping arms. As he passed, his hand shot out and struck the inside of the Vrathos' knee with surgical precision. The joint buckled. The scout stumbled, and before the hunter could recover, Cole was behind him. What happened next was too fast for Aurelia to follow clearly. She saw glimpses of movement, heard the sound of impacts, watched the massive Vrathos swing and grab at an enemy who was never where he expected. Cole moved like water, flowing around every attack, striking nerve clusters and pressure points that should not exist on a species with armored skin. But he knew exactly where they were, exactly how hard to hit, exactly when to move in less than 30 seconds. The scout was on the ground with Cole's boot pressed against his throat. The other two Vrathos had not moved. They stood frozen, watching with something that looked almost like awe. Cole spoke again in their language. A single short phrase, and then he stepped back and let the scout rise. The defeated hunter climbed to his feet slowly, his red eyes fixed on the human who had beaten him. There was no anger in those eyes now, no hunger. There was something else, something that Aurelia had never expected to see in a Vrathos. Respect. Scout lowered his head, a gesture of submission that went against everything Aurelia knew about their species. He spoke a few words in his native tongue, then turned and walked back toward the darkness. The other two scouts followed, their heads also bowed, their postures humble and defeated, and then they were gone, vanished into the night as if they had never existed. The camp was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Everyone stared at the human who stood alone in the open ground, breathing slowly, his calm expression unchanged. Finally, Aurelia found her voice. What just happened? She demanded. What did you say to them? What did you do? Cole turned to face her, and in the dim light, she could see that he was not even sweating. The fight had not tired him at all. I challenged the scout to single combat under their ancient laws, he said. When I won, I invoked the right of mercy. I let him live. In Vrathos culture, that creates a debt that cannot be ignored. He must tell his leaders what happened here. They will decide what to do next. You speak their language. You know their fighting techniques. You know their laws. How is that possible? You are supposed to be a trainee. Cole was quiet for a long moment, his brown eyes studying her face. Your Highness, he said finally, there are things about humanity that the galaxy does not know. Things we have kept secret for very good reasons. But I think the time has come to explain. He looked toward the darkness where the Vrathos had disappeared. Those scouts will return with their war chief by morning. He will want to see the creature who defeated his hunter. We have until then to prepare. Prepare for what? Cole met her eyes, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw something like worry in his expression. Prepare for me to do something that no human has ever done in front of alien witnesses. Prepare for me to show them what we really are. He walked back toward the ship without another word, leaving Veralia standing in the darkness with 1,000 questions and no answers. But one thing had changed forever. She would never look at humans the same way again. They gathered in the cargo bay of the damaged ship, far from the wounded and the dying, where they could speak without being overheard. The group was small. Princess Veralia, her advisor Thesok, the Krethian tracker whose name was Voss, and 2 of the senior Valanti guardsmen who had witnessed everything. Marcus Cole stood before them with his back against the metal wall and his arms crossed over his chest. The calm mask he usually wore was still in place, but there was something different about him now. He seemed larger somehow, more present, as if he had been hiding part of himself and had finally stopped. "You owe us an explanation," Veralia said. Her voice was hard, but underneath the hardness, there was something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or the beginning of fear. "Yes," Cole agreed. "I suppose I do." He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts, choosing his words carefully. When humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel, he began. "We did not know what we would find among the stars. We hoped for friends and allies, but we prepared for the worst. Our history had taught us that first contact between civilizations rarely went well for the weaker party." "Your species is barely a century into spacefaring," Thesok interrupted. "You are newcomers, children compared to the elder races. How could you possibly prepare for anything?" Cole smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "That is exactly what we wanted you to think." He pushed off from the wall and began to pace slowly, his footsteps echoing in the empty bay. 50 years before our first starship left Earth, our governments created a classified program called Project Apex. The goal was simple: identify every potentially hostile species in the galaxy and learn everything about them. Their biology, their psychology, their cultures, their combat techniques, their weaknesses. "That is impossible," Voss said. "You had no contact with other species. How could you study them?" "We intercepted communications," Cole replied. "We analyzed wreckage from ships that drifted into our system. We captured probe drones and extracted their data. We were patient, and we were thorough. By the time we made official first contact with the galaxy, we had files on over 200 species, including detailed profiles of every apex predator civilization in known space." Veralia felt cold. This was not the story of a young and innocent species finding its way among the stars. This was something else entirely. "The Vrathos were our priority target," Cole continued. "They were the most dangerous, the most feared, the most likely to see humanity as prey. So we studied them for 40 years. We learned their language, not just Galactic Common, but High Vrathos, the sacred tongue used only by their war priests and leaders. We learned their history, their religion, their honor codes, their submission rituals. We learned how they fight, how they hunt, how they think, and then what?" Veralia asked. "You cannot learn to defeat a Vrathos from books and recordings. They are too fast, too strong, too deadly." "You are right," Cole said. "Which is why Project Apex also created a training program. The most intensive, the most brutal, the most demanding program in human history. Children were selected at age 6 based on genetic potential and psychological profiles. They were raised in special facilities, trained every day for 20 years, modified with subtle biological enhancements that do not show up on standard medical scans." He stopped pacing and turned to face them directly. "We were taught to fight like Vrathos, to think like Vrathos, to move like Vrathos. But we were also taught something more important. We were taught to understand them, to respect them, to speak to them as equals. because the goal was never to destroy them. The goal was to earn their recognition. Recognition? Thesok sounded confused. Why would that matter? Because the Vrathos do not fear technology or numbers or political alliances, Cole explained. They have fought and defeated enemies with all those advantages. The only thing they respect is another predator, a creature that can look them in the eye and make them believe. Truly believe that hunting it would be a mistake. He paused, letting his words sink in. There are only 12 graduates of Project Apex currently active. We are called Apex Liaisons. Our job is to go to places where diplomacy has failed and war is not an option. We are humanity's secret weapon, our last resort when all other methods have failed. And your rank? Varelia asked. You told us you were a cadet. I lied. 1M Apex Liaison, first class. The rank of cadet was a cover, a way to be dismissed and ignored until I was needed. Your government did not know my true identity. Neither did mine officially. Only a handful of people on Earth know that Project Apex exists. Varelia stood up and walked toward him, her eyes searching his face for deception. She found none. You said you would show them what humans really are. What does that mean? What are you? Cole met her gaze without flinching. Your Highness, every species in the galaxy has a story about where they came from. Most of those stories are about survival, about escaping predators, about finding safety. Humanity's story is different. He took a step closer, and his voice dropped lower. On our homeworld, we were not prey. We were never prey. We were the ones who hunted. We killed everything that threatened us. We drove the great predators to extinction. We conquered every environment, every climate, every challenge that our planet could create. When we ran out of animals to hunt, we hunted each other. We waged wars for thousands of years, perfecting the art of violence until no species in our system could match us. But you seem so peaceful, Boss said. So harmless. I would never have guessed. That is the point, Cole replied. When we reached the stars, we made a choice. We decided to hide what we are. We pretended to be young and weak and harmless because it gave us an advantage. No one fears a species they do not respect. No one prepares defenses against a threat they do not believe exists. He smiled again, and this time there was something almost sad in it, but the Vrathos know. They can sense it. When I fought their scout, he recognized something in me that he had never seen in an alien before. He recognized a fellow predator. Not the biggest predator, not the strongest predator, but the most dangerous kind. What kind? Varelia whispered. Cole's eyes seemed to darken. The kind that never stops. The kind that will chase its prey across continents and wait for days and track a wounded animal until it collapses from exhaustion. The kind that does not need to be faster or stronger because it has something better. Patience, endurance, and an absolute refusal to give up. He turned toward the door. That is what I will show the Vrathos war chief tomorrow. That is the truth of humanity. We are not prey, and we never have been. We are the hunters who learn to wear sheep's clothing. He paused at the doorway and looked back. Get some rest, Your Highness. Tomorrow will be a long day. Then he was gone, leaving Varelia alone with her thoughts and a terrible new understanding of the species she had dismissed. As unremarkable humans were not harmless, they were simply very, very good at pretending to be. Dawn came slowly to the uncharted moon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold as the nebula's light filtered through the atmosphere. It was beautiful, peaceful, almost gentle. But everyone in the camp knew that beauty was a lie. They were waiting for Vrathos to return. Varelia had not slept. She had spent the night watching Marcus Cole from a distance, trying to understand the creature she had dismissed as worthless just days ago. He sat near the edge of the camp, perfectly still, his eyes closed, his breathing slow and steady. He might have been meditating, or sleeping, or simply waiting. She could not tell as the light grew stronger. The Ulati Scion suddenly gasped and clutched her head. "They are coming," she whispered. "Many of them. More than before. I can feel their minds approaching." Cole opened his eyes and rose to his feet in one smooth motion. There was no hesitation, no fear, no sign that he had just been resting. He was instantly alert, instantly ready. "Form a line behind me," he said to the protection detail. "Weapons down. No aggressive postures. Let me handle this. You expect us to face Vrathos without weapons ready?" One of the Volanti demanded. "I expect you to trust me. This is not a fight. This is a negotiation. If I fail, you can die with weapons in your hands. Until then, follow my lead." The Volanti looked at Varelia, waiting for her command. She hesitated for only a second. "Do as he says." They formed a line as ordered, weapons lowered but not holstered, their bodies tense with fear and anticipation. Varelia took her place at the center, surrounded by her guardsmen. Watching the tree line where the scouts had disappeared the night before, they did not have to wait long. The Vrathos emerged from the forest like a wave of gray armor and red eyes. There were at least 30 of them, massive hunters carrying weapons and wearing ceremonial marks that identified them as elite warriors. They moved in perfect formation, silent and deadly, spreading out to surround the camp with practiced efficiency. At their head walked the largest Vrathos that Varelia had ever seen. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, his body covered with scars that told the story of 100 victories. His forearms were thick with muscle, and his red eyes burned with an intelligence that seemed almost unnatural for such a savage species. This was Vrathos, war chief of the Kale Nebula hunters. His name was spoken in fearful whispers across a dozen star systems. He stopped about 20 meters from the camp and studied the defenders with obvious contempt. His gaze moved across the Volanti, the Mortith, the various aliens who had gathered to protect their princess. None of them impressed him. None of them mattered. Then his eyes found Marcus Cole, and everything changed. The war chief went still. His nostrils flared. His head tilted to one side as he examined the small human who stood alone in front of the others. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Vrathos spoke in high Vrathos. His voice, deep and rumbling like distant thundercall, replied in the same language. His tone respectful but unafraid. The exchange continued for several minutes. Varelia could not understand the words, but she could read the body language. This was a test, a challenge, a conversation between two predators establishing their relative positions. Every phrase, every gesture, every moment of silence carried meaning finally. Vrathos asked something that made Cole pause. The human was quiet for a long time, considering his response, and when he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that had not been there before. The war chief listened. His scarred face showed nothing. And then he did something that Varelia would remember for the rest of her life. He laughed. It was not the cruel laugh of a predator, mocking its prey. It was something deeper, something almost joyful. It was the laugh of a hunter who had finally found something worthy of his. Attention. Vrathos stepped forward until he was only a few meters from Cole. His warriors shifted nervously, but he raised one hand and they went still. "I smelled something strange when my scout returned," the war chief said in heavily accented Galactic common. I did not believe him. I thought he had been shamed by a soft thing and was making excuses. But now I understand. He leaned down until his face was level with Cole's. "You carry the scent of the endless hunt. It is in your blood, in your bones, in the way you stand and the way you breathe. Your ancestors knew what we know. They understood what we understand. You are not soft things pretending to be hard." His red eyes narrowed. "You are hard things pretending to be soft. Much more dangerous. Much more interesting." Cole nodded slowly. My people have a saying, the greatest hunter is the one who is never suspected. Yes, Vrathos agreed. We have a similar saying, the prey that hunts back is no longer prey. He straightened up and reached to his belt. Varelia's guardsmen tensed, expecting an attack. But instead, the war chief drew a small blade made of black metal, its surface covered with intricate carvings. This is a bonding blade, Vrathos said. It has been in my family for 20 generations. It is given only to those who have earned the respect of the Vrathos people. In all our history, we have never given one to an outsider. He held the blade out to Cole. Today, that changes. Cole looked at the blade for a long moment. Then he reached out and took it, his small human fingers wrapping around the handle that was designed for much larger hands. I accept, he said. And I offer friendship between our peoples. Vrathos nodded, and then he did the impossible. He lowered his head behind him. 30 elite Vrathos warriors did the same. Row after row of apex predators, the most feared hunters in the galaxy, bowing to a single human who stood barely half their height. The pack recognizes its own, Vrathos said. You and your people will never be prey in our territory. Any who threaten you threaten us. This is the oath of the Kale Nebula. It will not be broken. He raised his head and smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Now, let us escort you to safety. Your ship is damaged, and there are worse things than us in this nebula. We will see you to the border. 3 hours later, the royal convoy crossed out of Vrathos space under full military escort. The hunters who had been prepared to kill them were now protecting them with fierce dedication. Varelia stood at the viewing deck and watched the Vrathos ships peel away one by one, returning to their territory. Behind her, she heard footsteps, and she knew without looking that it was Cole. You saved us, she said without turning around. I did my job. No, you did much more than that. You changed everything. The galaxy will hear about what happened here. They will know that humans are not what they seem. Cole was quiet for a moment. Perhaps that is a good thing. Perhaps it is time for us to stop pretending. Varelia finally turned to face him. The unremarkable human in his simple gray uniform, standing at the back of the formation like always. Quiet and patient and utterly forgettable, except now she knew what he really was. I misjudged you, she said. He smiled, that small, tired smile she had seen before. Most do. That is rather the point. I will not make that mistake again. Good. Because humanity has many more surprises waiting, Your Highness. We have been preparing for a very long time. He turned and walked away, resuming his position at the back of the group. Just another trainee. Just another forgettable face. But Varelia knew better now. She knew what humans really were. Not the strongest. Not the fastest. Not the most advanced, but patient, enduring, relentless. The hunters who never stopped. The predators who wore the masks of prey. And she understood, finally, why the elder races whispered warnings about Earth. Not because humans were dangerous, but because no one ever realized it until far, far too late.